You know what? I've spent a lot of time being really negative on this channel, and while talking shit about bad movies is really fun, I thought I would try to make something a little more constructive. So today, I would like to talk about internal monologues. Internal monologues are a literary device that lets the reader or viewer know what the character is thinking about. In written narratives, it is completely fine to use this, simply because you can't see the character's face or the scenery, so the author has to communicate this information through internal monologue or sometimes through narration. But whenever a movie adaptation of a book comes out, they'll usually forego all of that simply because now you can see it. You don't need to explain what the character is thinking about, because you can see it all over their face. You can just look at their expression in relation to the scenery or something they just learned and you can tell what they are feeling. Well, sometimes. However, there is a certain medium of storytelling that seems to want to beat us over the heads with what the characters are thinking. Yes, I'm talking about anime. Despite being a purely visual medium, the people who make these cartoons seem to rely on characters' thoughts to convey information. Now, I am aware that some of this occurs from doing direct one-to-one adaptations of manga, but here's the thing, manga doesn't need to rely on this either. The artists have free reign to make their characters' faces as expressive as they want. But going back to anime, they don't have to take over every little thing into an adaptation. They should be allowed to make small changes in how the information is presented. In an adaptation, should it be faithful, what should matter is whether the information is the same, not whether it is told the same way. Anyway, instead of just telling you how it should be, I'm going to use some examples. First of all, let's look at Black Clover, a relatively recent battle shonen anime that features one of my favorite fights in the entire genre. This fight being the one against Veto, a character of immense strength. He was so tough that it required our heroes to come up with a plan. This plan involved Vanessa and Finral using their string and portal magic to manipulate Asta's movement. This way they could move him out of danger while also getting him into a position to get in some hits. It's a very creative way to have multiple characters combining their abilities to fight a difficult opponent, as opposed to the usual working together that involves two or more fighters just randomly throwing attacks. But now that I'm done praising this fight, let's get into why I brought it up in the first place. During the fight, we see a scene in which we hear Finral's thoughts on the matter. His internal monologue informs us that what they are doing requires their undivided attention. There are also a few sections of spoken dialogue inserted to let us know that they will eventually run out of magic power. We don't need this, it is 100% redundant. It is self-evident that they would need to focus really hard in order to pull off this maneuver. If instead, we just had a shot of Finral and Vanessa looking intently as they perform their magic, that would be more than enough. Maybe throw in a few anime grunts to show that they're struggling. You also don't need to tell us that they're running out of magic. You can just show us with visuals, which they do, they just don't trust us to figure out what it means. There is one thing that we do learn from this exposition, however, and that is the fact that Finral considered running away, but didn't. We know that he didn't run away, for an obvious reason, but telling us that he considered it as at least new information. However, there are still ways to give us this information without spelling it out explicitly. Maybe have him look towards an exit and then shake his head before resuming his concentration. Maybe by doing this, Asta gets hurt by Veto, causing Finral to realize just how much he's needed here. It's still a little too overt, but it's a hell of a lot more subtle than what we have. Moving on, I have another example. The next example comes from the much more recent series, Spy X Family. In the second episode, we are introduced to the mother of the fake family, Yor. The episode sets up that Yor is a bit of a social outcast. She has no boyfriend. As part of the setup, one of Yor's co-workers is throwing a party for the others. Later, Yor is on the phone with her brother. He is meddling in her personal life, offering to set her up with a date. She lies, claiming that she'll be going to that party with her partner. Her brother then tells her that he'll be asking one of her co-workers about her boyfriend. This is all completely fine, but the problem starts after the call. Instead of leaving it as is, Yor's thoughts are forced into our face. She thinks about how she needs to find a guy before the party, which is obvious. She thinks about how, if she's found out, he'll think she's a liar, which is obvious. We don't need any of that. We already know that she doesn't have a partner. We already know that she lied, and we already know that she has a time limit. This is information that just as easily could have been left for us to figure out. It's not that hard. The issue is already bad when the story spells out information that you could figure out, but it's at its absolute worst when it ends up giving the exact same information. Like, I've seen comedy series where the characters have straight up explained the joke with their thoughts. But also, in Spy X Family, they have the writing crutch that is Anya, a character that can read minds. It could have easily been a narrative choice to only have characters' thoughts spelled out when Anya is around, but no, they do it all the time anyway. So now, allow me the opportunity to give an example of how easy it is to do it right. The example in question comes from the 2001 movie American Pie 2. After a series of events in which the main character Jim accidentally glues his hand to his penis, he is unable to have sex with the foreign girl of his dreams. At least not when she arrives. So, to buy some time, he enlists the help of the band geek Michelle, who he has had previous relations with. So, she pretends to be his girlfriend until his wangus recovers. After his recovery, however, they must now pretend to break up. And after that, we are gifted with a delightful little scene of Michelle in her car. I shouldn't need to explain what she's feeling here, it's obvious. She isn't satisfied with how things have turned out. I wonder if it's because she likes Jim or something. I really like this example because it shows that something doesn't have to be highbrow to have a little bit of subtext. No one saw this movie and had trouble figuring out what was being communicated. So why is it that in a visual medium, there are so many series that feel the need to spell everything out? But you know what? There's something else that's lost in storytelling when this occurs. So let's shift gears and give an example from something that's really quite good. An amazingly well-crafted series that features amazing character writing and an atmosphere that is just perfect for a horror show. The series in question is, of course, The Haunting of Hill House. But because I easily recommend this show to everyone, I'm going to explain this without spoiling anything. Please bear with me on this one. Early on in the story, the character Theo does a thing. After doing this thing, she panics, and she freaks the fuck out. From then on, her behavior is very strange.
Stand there and dictate how we all grieve our dead. Fuck!
This causes some conflict with another character. This then leads to a payoff where Theo has to explain herself. So why this works is because when Theo does the thing, we can already guess what might be happening, and we can figure out that her behavior afterwards is related to that thing. But because we don't know exactly what the problem is, that creates a plot thread. Something that can be revealed later. If we had heard Theo's thoughts when she did thing, that would have severed this thread. It would have made the payoff completely redundant. I don't really want to say that a writer can or should never use internal monologue as a writing tool, but I will say that if they do, they lose out on the potential to have a character's thoughts be a mystery that needs to be solved. If I had to say when it would be appropriate to use internal monologue, it would have to be this. Only when there's absolutely no other way to give a piece of information. There are other pieces of media that I think use it well. For example, the film American Psycho, in which the story revolves around the thoughts of a crazy person. Or in the anime series Kaguya-sama, where the character's thoughts are an integral aspect of the joke being told. Or the final be-all, end-all of all internal monologue within media. The perfect example of how to use it. Nothing will ever top it. Yeah!